Welcome to Miss Retro Reads. I hope you're enjoying Head Girl of the Chalet School because we're continuing with it now. Chapter 8 The Snow Fight. The wind, which had been heavy, died down during the night. The frost set in. Joey Bettany, waking at the unearthly hour of 5, tumbled out of bed to look out at the starry sky and saw the white and silvery traces on the windows, which told that the earth was in an iron grip, which was likely to continue for the next few weeks. By dint of breathing hard on the panes and rubbing the place with the corner of her dressing gown, she managed to make a peephole for herself, and to view the landscape. The snow lay white and sparkling under the light of the dying moon, and the brilliance of the stars was a good omen. "Thanks be," she breathed, as she got back into bed after a look at her watch to reassure herself that it was much too early to go get Madge. "Now we'll get out for a bit." She lay awake, for she dared not switch on the light, or she would have awakened the others. However, she had plenty to think about. She was in the middle of writing an exciting story about the Napoleonic Wars, and she wanted to think out her next chapter. For the first time in her life, she was finding her work difficult. The characters would not do as she wanted. They insisted on going their own sweet way, and the story was developing on quite other lines than she had intended. "I can't think what's wrong with the silly things," she grumbled under her breath. "Why can't they do as I want? They seem to go on in all directions." It was, had she but known it, a very promising sign. Her paper children were becoming real. It is only when a story tells itself that it is worth much. Jo lay quite happily planning the deeds of her hero, little realizing that when it came to writing them down, they would work out differently and cause her endless trouble and annoyance. The minute she heard the clock chime 6, she scrambled out of bed again, and, putting her dressing gown on, she went with her electric torch to light the way. She tiptoed out of the room and up the stairs to the room where her sister lay, dreaming happily of her absent husband. Madge was rudely awakened. "All right, it's only me," said Joey, in careful, grudging tones. "Lie down again, Madge. I've come for a chat." "Did you even put on your bedroom slippers?" demanded Madge, as she lay down, with a caution justified by the narrowness of the bed, put an arm round her sister. "I did, but it's freezing like everything. Shouldn't wonder if the wolves don't come out on the plains again. They did the first winter we were here, 'member?" "Yes, I do. For goodness sake, keep your feet to yourself. They're so cold." "They're like lumps of ice, and so are your hands," as she encountered one of them. "All right, I'll warm up soon." "Have you got enough bed?" "Yes, heaps." "Have you? For goodness sake, don't fall out and waken everyone." Jo chuckled. "They'd get a shock. Mamie's beneath. She'd think it was a young earthquake." Madge gurgled in company as she wriggled herself comfortable. "That's better. You're still on the bony side, Jo. I wish you'd fatten up a little." "Oh, I'm as fat as I'd want to be," returned Joey easily. "I should hate to be a square like Mary, for instance." "Mary's not fat. She's built that way." "Well, I'm not fat 'cause I'm built that way. Sort of sylph-like, you know." By the way, sylph is like a fairy. Madge buried her face in the pillow to stifle her laughter. Joey was straight and thin. Self-like was the last expression one would have used to describe her. She was much too bony. "Well, I'd rather be scraggy than tubby," declared the insulted lady. "And you can't talk anyway. There's nothing chubby about you, my lamb." "Chubby? Well, I should think not." Madge, whose round slenderness certainly gave no evidence of fat, sounded indignant. "Keep your hair on." "I said you aren't." "Jo, do you think we could manage a snow fight this morning?" "Rather." Jo was wide awake in the minute. "What a tremendous idea. Do you really think we could?" "Well, I don't see why not. You people have been shut up closely since term began. It will be as well to make the most of the fine weather, for one never knows how soon it may begin to snow again. I think we'll cut lessons and stay out most of the morning. Skating will be out of the question, I'm afraid, as the ice will be too rough for you yet. A snow fight seems the best thing. You'll have to keep moving, you know. Right-o. The others'll love it, of course. They discussed the idea for a short while, and then Joey drifted off into other things, and they talked till the rising bell went. At Fraustruck, it required no penetration for her to know that Joey had already passed on her idea of the snow fight to as many of her friends as possible. There was an air of excitement about the Middles, and they giggled and murmured together as much as they dared or were able. When all conversations, as to be in a foreign language to some, at least, views are apt to remain rather limited in expression. Still they made quite noise enough, and Mrs. Russell rather wished she had warned Joey to say nothing till the whole school was told. It was too late now, however, and the table was lively, to say the least of it. None of the seniors knew, for Joe had not mentioned it to them. They looked mildly surprised at the animation of their juniors, and Grizel began to wear a worried air. She knew that this sort of thing generally preceded a piece of outrageous naughtiness. The head decided to keep them all in a suspense no longer. So, when grace had been said, she checked them as they were about to leave the room, and told them what she proposed. Everyone was delighted, of course, and they raced away to make their beds, chattering happily, while the staff congregated round the empty tables and discussed the affair a little further. It was decided that the babies were to have their own snow fight in front of La Petite Chalet, as the older ones might be unintentionally rough. The others were to divide into two camps, one captained by Grizel and the other by Gertrude. "Let them stay out as long as they want or can," said Mrs. Russell, with a glance at the barometer, which was very low. "We must send in anyone who gets tired, of course. Some of them can't stand as much as the others. Mademoiselle and Miss Durant will look after the juniors, and they can all have a good time. I believe our trouble with Dira will be straightened after she has had a good 2 hours or so of exercise in the open air. The confinement of the last few weeks has probably helped to upset her." "Quite likely," said Miss Maynard. "I only hope it is so. Well, shall we go and do what we have to do? The girls won't be long now." Half an hour later, the whole party was ready to go out. Everyone was well wrapped up, and everyone wore stout boots and heavily nailed soles. They rushed out, shouting and laughing. It was very silent outside, and a heavy gray sky showed that the snow would soon be falling again. From La Petite Chalet there came the sounds of the juniors' voices as they tumbled about, laughing and dancing, making snowballs. Mrs. Russell left the girls to go and see that they were all right, and Miss Maynard and Miss Wilson set to work to get the sides organized. Grizel and Gertrude had picked up in the house, so the two parties separated and were each given a part of what was the flower garden in summer. They were to settle their own tactics, and the one that was driven from its own part was to be accounted the vanquished side. Several of the youngest girls were busy making snowballs, piling them up ready, while the seniors directed their movements. Gertrude, anxious to keep the peace as far as possible, had chosen Dira for her own side, and now set her to overseeing the efforts of the Middles, while she herself posted various people at different places along her front. Then the battle began, and raged furiously. The mistresses had their work cut out to keep out of the line of fire, and yet be on the spot to see that no accidents happened. Joey Bettany, fighting for Grizel, slipped in the snow and went down with a wild yell, which was echoed by two of the enemy, who promptly bombarded her, so that it was some time before she was able to struggle to her feet again. Frida, caught by Paula, of the other side, had her face well scrubbed in the snow before she managed to retaliate in the same way. The shouting became more and more breathless, and the laughter shriller as the excited girls rushed and swooped and flung handfuls of snow at each other. The dry powder could hurt no one, and the balls were not hard, so it was all very good fun. Even Dira lost her sullen air and dashed about and shouted as hard as anyone. Grizel, leading her side and gradually forcing the others from its place, seemed to be everywhere at once. Now she was driving one of the enemy away, and now she was rescuing one of her fellows. Now she was hurling snowballs as hard as she could go at her foes. One struck Dira in the face, though as a matter of fact, it had been aimed at Gertrude. Gertrude, however, had dodged, and the snow passed by her and caught Dira. The girl was already excited by the exercise. She scarcely knew what she was doing. To her eyes, it looked as though Grizel had taken deliberate aim at her. She stooped and grabbed at something which lay on the ground and had been turned up in the scramble. Without hesitating 1 second, giving herself no time to realize what it was or what she was doing, she flung it with a sure aim and caught the other side leader full on the temple. Grizel flung up her hands and gave a little cry and went down. At first it was looked on as a joke. It was only when Grizel lay there horribly still and silent that they realized that something had happened. The fight stopped at once. Gertrude dropped the ball she had poised to hurl at Joe and hurried to the other girl's side. Miss Maynard raced across the garden and dropped to her knees. Grizel lay quite still, her face as white as the snow, a thin trickle of blood showing where the missile, whatever it was, had struck her. The mistress wiped it gently away, and her lips tightened as she saw the nasty cut. "Go and get one of your mistresses, girls," she said quietly. "Joey, go and ask Madame to come here. She is over at La Petite Chalet. Gertrude, bring me the brandy from the matron and ask her to get a bed ready at once. The rest of you go in, all except Mary, Rosalie, Dira, and Eva. Luigia, will you please take charge till someone comes?" They did as they were told at once. Joey shot off like an arrow to fetch her sister. Gertrude went to tell matron, and 2 or more of the seniors rushed up to the nearest dormitory to get a mistress. Mrs. Russell had come by the time they returned with it, and was kneeling by the side of the unconscious girl. Except for the little group round Grizel, the garden was deserted now. By Grizel's side lay what had caused the accident, a sharp piece of stone, which Dira, in her blind fury, had flung without notice what it was. She stood amongst the others, very white and frightened. No one, of course, had any idea that she had done it. In the heat of the battle, her action had passed unnoticed. But she knew herself, and was already in an agony of remorse. They got Grizel to the mattress, and then the girls named by Miss Maynard, helped by the staff who were there, slowly lifting it, and the girl was borne off to the sick room, where a matron, calm and capable, already had a bed open for her, and dressing ready for the wounds. Miss Wilson went off to ring up Dr. Jim to bring him post-haste, while Mrs. Russell and Miss Maynard did what they could for the girl. They had got her to bed when she began to moan, and Mad Russell turned to her colleague. "Molly, go tell the girls that she is alive. I dare do nothing more till Jem comes. I don't know enough about it. It has been a near thing, though. I'm afraid of a concussion." Miss Maynard went off to relieve the anxious girls who were in the big classroom, talking in subdued tones. Dira was there too. She heard what the mistress had said, and her white face became whiter. Miss Maynard, preoccupied and worried, never noticed her. She gave Mrs. Russell's message and left the room. Outside in the passage, she was startled to feel a tense, nervous grip on her arm. Turning round, she saw Dira, and eager to return to the sick room as she was, she felt that she must stop. "Dira, my dear, don't look like that. Grizel's alive. We hope she will still be all right again." "You don't understand," said Dira in a husky tone. "It's my fault. If Grizel dies, I am a murderess. I did it. Chapter 9. The feud ends. If Grizel dies, I am a murderess, repeated Dira tremblingly. Miss Maynard looked at her keenly. She realized that the girl was on the verge of hysterics, so she paused, opened the door of the study, and drew her in. Now, Dira, sit down and tell me what you mean, she said quietly, as she closed the door and switched on the lights, for the sky had darkened ominously, and the little room was dusky. It was my fault, said Dira. I was angry with Grizel. She threw a snowball at me, and it hit me. Sure, I thought 'twas on purpose she'd done it, and out of spite, so I picked up what was handy and threw it. 'Deed, Miss Maynard, I never saw what it was. I didn't think at all. Oh, Miss Maynard, will she die? Nonsense, said Miss Maynard briskly. She's alive, and she may be ill. I can't tell you that she won't be, but we hope it won't be very bad. Only, Dira, think what your temper has done and might have done. If Grizel had been killed, you would never have forgiven yourself, I think. Now I must go. Mrs. Russell may be wanting me. Dira nodded. She was putting a tremendous restraint on herself at that moment. Actually, she wanted to scream and cry, she realized. Miss Maynard knew what was passing in her mind, and guessed that for the present the girl was best left to herself. You may stay here, Dira, she said gently. I think you would rather do that than go back with the others. If anything happens with Grizel, you shall be told at once. Then she left the room, and Dira, settling back in her chair, tried to recover herself. The house was very silent now, and the girls had gone to their form rooms and were trying to fix their minds on their work. Mademoiselle had come over from La Petite Chalet and was giving the fourth their lesson in French literature. The sixth were working on maths by themselves, since Miss Maynard was still upstairs in the sick room. The fifth were doing geography with Miss Wilson, and Miss Durand was busy with babies in their own house. As for the third, Gertrude had come to them and was giving them German. Outside, the snow had begun to drift again, and in the study the only sound was the crackling of the wood in the stove. The quiet soothed Dira. She got up from the chair and moved over to the stove to feed it, and to warm herself. Now the excitement was gone. She felt cold. She had been alone for more than an hour, and then the door opened, and the robin peeped in. I want Tante Marguerite, she said. Madame is with Grizel, said Dira. The robin shut the door and came up to her. Is Grizel then sick? She asked, lifting big, dark eyes to the elder girl's face. Yes, she is not well, stammered Dira. It was plain that the school baby knew nothing of what had happened. Could she tell her? The robin was full of sympathy. Pauvre Grizel, she said. Has she eaten too much of chocolate? She has had an accident. Madame and Miss Maynard are with her, said Dira. You are sorry 'cause you're cross with her? Never mind, pauvre Dira. She will soon be well, replied the robin comfortingly. Don't look so sad. Me, I will stay with you. She slipped a chubby hand into Dira's and snuggled up. The Irish girl sank on to the sofa and lifted the baby on her knee. The robin put warm arms round her neck and hugged her. Oh, but 'tis the darlin' you are, murmured Dira, turning to hug her. The robin took it quite calmly, as her due. How did Grizel hurt herself? She asked suddenly, when she had bestowed a few more hugs on the elder girl. Dira did not dare to tell her of what had happened. For all she knew, it might be Mrs. Russell's wish that the junior should know nothing of what had happened, so she temporized. She got hit with a stone which was flung by mistake, she said, going as near to the truth as she could. Oh, said the robin, and drew in her breath in a long-drawn sigh. Then she turned and looked at Dira. How dreadful! It's awful, said Dira unsteadily. It's dreadful for the one who threw the stone, went on the robin, pondering things out in her baby way. She looked up and caught sight of Dira's face. Dira, was it you?" There was a moment's silence, and then, "Yes," said Dira. She half expected the child to draw away in horror, but the robin simply snuggled closer. "Oh, pauvre Dira," she said, lapsing into French. Dira had heard the others say more than once that the robin was the best comforter to have when you were in trouble, but she had never felt it before. Now, as the baby's arms encircled her neck, she felt the truth of it. "The stone was a mistake, Robin," she said unevenly. I didn't know what it was." "Course you didn't. Never mind, Dira. Tante Marguerite will understand. She always does. She'll know you're sorry, and she'll forgive you. So will Grizel. Don't cry, poor Dira." For Dira had begun to cry softly and bitterly, but in a very different way from what she had wished an hour ago. Unfortunately, once she had begun, she found it hard to stop, and when Mrs. Russell, leaving Grizel for a few minutes to find the girl whom she had just told was the cause of all the mischief, she found a Niobe-like scene, for by this time the robin was crying too, and of sympathy for a grief she could feel, even if she couldn't understand it. "Girls, why are you crying like this?" asked the head quietly. "Robin, you must stop at once." The robin had been trained to obedience, so she choked back her sobs and said brokenly, "Tante Guito, Dira is so sorry." "I'm sure she is," said Mrs. Russell. "Crying won't help matters, though. So you must both stop at once. You can run over to La Petite Chalet, Robin. I will come to you at bedtime, but I can't come before. You will be good? Yes, you may kiss Dira, and then run away. Joey shall come presently. Ask Gertrude to take you across. She's in the prefect's room. And be sure you are well wrapped." The robin kissed Dira, and then trotted off to seek Gertrude, and give her Madame's message. Dira still sobbed on, though she was making heroic efforts to check her sobs. The head gave her a minute or more. Then she stooped over her. "Dira, I want you to control yourself. I cannot stay here long, for I must go back to Grizel. But I can't leave you like this. Come." Dira fumbled for her handkerchief, and the head put her own into her hands. And then, while the girl dried her eyes, Madge Russell made up the fire in the stove again. When she thought that Dira had herself in hand, she spoke again. "Dira, Miss Maynard tells me that you say that you are to blame for what happened." "Yes, madame." "I'm very sorry for you, dear. And yet I am glad for this. I think you will learn a very terrible lesson from this, how far your temper can take you when you give way to it. Will you try to think about it? I don't think you will ever again let yourself bear malice or carry on a feud with anyone as you have done this time. But remember that the girls are not to know if we can help it. It must lie between Grizel and yourself and me. Miss Maynard knows, and I think we must tell Mademoiselle, but no one else is to learn if we can manage it. Do you understand, dear?" The robin knows," said Dira with a catch in her voice. "Yes, but I shall tell her she is to say nothing. I am sorry she does know, but I suppose you couldn't help it. I don't believe in the excitement of the moment and that they knew who threw the stone. I'm going to ask you to be as much your usual self as possible, and that will keep them from guessing. If they have missed you, they will only think that you were upset because you and Grizel had been on bad terms, and you were sorry you hadn't made it up. You're very tired now, so I'm going to send you to bed. Go and get yourself to bed and lie down. Try to sleep. And when you join the others, remember I have forbidden you to tell them anything." Dira nodded and got up. She was worn out with the force of her emotions. She got to bed and was there for the rest of the day. No one came near her, for they were still very anxious about Grizel, who had never recovered consciousness, but still lay in a state of coma. The others decided, as Mrs. Russell had said, that Dira was upset by the thought that she had refused to make friends, and now she couldn't. "Poor old thing. I bet she feels rotten," said Joey Bettany, with her own peculiar clan. "I guess she's mad with herself all right," said Evander. an American child famed in the school for her extensive slang vocabulary, which after 3 years was as unique as ever it had been, though she managed to curb her tongue a little during term time. I'd feel a skunk if I were her. She must be very unhappy, sighed Frida. Is Griselle going to die? Asked Simone in odd tones. The next minute she was sorry she had spoken, for Joey rounded on her with startling vehemence. For pity's sake, Simone, dry up. Of course she isn't. If you can't be more cheerful, just be quiet. You're a regular Job's comforter. What Simone might have replied to this tirade nobody ever knew, for just then Paula announced that Dr. Jim was coming up the path, and Joe darted out of the room to welcome him. She got little satisfaction, for Madge had been watching the path eagerly for the last hour, and was already in the passage, and sent her young sister back to the form room post-haste. It was after 7 that evening before the doctor left Grizel's side, and then he went to see Dira. Mrs. Russell, however, came down to tell the anxious girls that it was all right. Grisel had come to herself and had murmured something about a rotten head before she dropped off into natural sleep. She would be in bed for the next few days, but she would soon be herself again. The girls were overjoyed at the news. It had seemed such a terrible thing that their jolly snow fight should have ended in that way. The older ones, at any rate, realized that there might have been a tragedy, though no one knew what had caused it. The general idea was that the ball, which was supposed to have been flung at Grisel, had gotten frozen. This was Joey's ingenious idea, and had been harder than the others. The school went to bed that night very happy indeed, and Vanna even took the trouble to peep into Dira's cubicle to see if she were awake, so that she might hear the good news. Dira, however, was asleep, exhausted by the repentance, so the Italian girl went on to her own domain in silence. Grisel slept for most of the next 2 days, sleeping herself well again, as Dr. Jim had prophesied. He went off to the Sanalp the next day, leaving his wife behind, for the path would be difficult, since snow was still falling, and also she was anxious to see Grisel out of bed before she left herself. It was not till 4 days after the affair that Grisel asked anything about the other girls. Then, one afternoon, when Madge was sitting knitting by the side of her, she spoke. "Madame, will Dira come to see me, do you think?" "I'll send her up with café," answered Mrs. Russell without further comment. She had wondered how much Grisel knew of the accident, and if she were aware that the Irish girl was to blame for it. It was impossible to tell from the head girl's manner, but it looked rather like it. She had lain back on her pillow with a satisfied air, and said no more on the subject. Instead, she demanded to know when she might get up. "I loathe bed," she remarked. "It's all very well at the proper time, but I hate it when you've got to stay there." The head laughed. "Bed in the early morning is desirable, I suppose," she said. "Rather, but I've had enough of it now. I can get up tomorrow, madame, can I?" "We'll wait till Dr. Jim comes to see you again," said Madge cautiously. Grisel heaved a deep sigh, but the bell ringing for café precluded what she might have had to say, and Mrs. Russell went off to join the others, leaving her in matron's charge with a mischievous smile. 5 o'clock brought Dira to the room, a shame-faced Dira she was, with a scared look in her eyes, for she guessed that Grisel knew all there was to know about the accident. Matron tucked some more wood into the stove, warned the visitor against exciting the invalid, and then went out, leaving them alone. When she had gone, Grisel held out her hand. "Will you shake now?" she asked. Dira took it. "Do you know?" she asked. "Know what?" "About that stone?" "Yes, but you never meant it." "I didn't," said Dira. "It was temper. I'd have chucked a log at your head just then." "Let's be thankful there wasn't any handy," said Grisel with a grin. "Half a brick's good enough for me, thank you." She gave Dira's hand a friendly grip. "I'm sorry," said Dira. "Righto. It was my fault much as yours. I've been beastly with my tongue, and you've been beastly with your temper. so we'd better call it quits." Dira suddenly bent down and kissed Grizel. "You're jolly forgiving," she said. "'Tis myself will remember that." And so the feud was ended, and when Matron came half an hour later, they were discussing the absolute awfulness of their last French translation. And the next chapter we're going to read is called Marie's News. So join us next Wednesday for that, and thanks for listening to Miss Retro Reads.